everybody. Welcome to Central Side. I'm your host, Brianna Blocker, and I have two very special guests with me today. I have Dr. Joe Moore. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
And I have Mr. John Kennedy.
Hi.
How
good
are
to,
you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
All
Got
right.
the president in the house.
All right, let's dive right in, guys.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts of if the university athletics program decides to go Division One?
Will it go Division One? It's hard to say never because the university's enrollment keeps increasing. We're up to, I think, about 14,000, almost 14,500 students. So I suppose it's not out of the realm of possibility that, at some point, if the growth stays there, that maybe certain sports may consider going Division One. But, I certainly don't speak on behalf of the university in any way in this, but just as a Mules and Jennies fan, my personal guess would be that wouldn't be something on the immediate horizon for the Mules or Jennies in any of the sports right now. But I think it just includes a tremendous outlay in terms of financial commitment, facilities, extra money for transportation, coaches, and then of course scholarships would have to increase dramatically. So I would say it's something that's not in the immediate future. But again, I don't know that for a fact, having talked to the department or anything like that.
I hear that a lot.
I went to school here in the late '80s, early '90s, and even then they were talking about going Division One, and I just don't see it ever happening. Even as the enrollment increases, one thing you got to think about is your community. How big is the community to support it? There's only really two schools in our conference that are in communities that I think would be big enough to support a Division One program, and that's Missouri Southern down in Joplin, which has about 50,000 people in Joplin, and Washburn in Topeka, and I'm not sure how big Topeka is, but it's a good enough size that it could support a Division I program. But neither of those teams are dominant in anything. Neither of those two programs are dominant in anything that would give the reason to move up to Division I. There have been two schools in the past, I think, 3 decades from our conference that have gone to Division I, Missouri State and SEMO. Mm-hmm. At what point have they become relevant in Division I? They're not. They just aren't good. It takes a lot to be able to make it up to that level. One, we have great Division II facilities. Football stadium's gorgeous.
Definitely.
Getting a new turf field on our baseball field. Our indoor track is fantastic. Multi's a nice facility to be competing in. They're great Division II facilities. Mm-hmm. They're not Division I facilities. I look at my alma mater where I got my PhD at Colorado State. Their football stadium seats between 30 and 40,000. Wow. When they have their annual game with the University of Colorado, Colorado won't play there. It's too small. At 30,000, our seats about 12,000. So they're great Division II facilities, but they're not Division I facilities. And John mentioned, he hit the nail on the head. You think about the financial outlay. Division II gets 36 scholarships for football. Division I AA or FCS, which is probably what we would compete in football, they get 63. Division I's 85.
85, I think, in Division I. And so you start thinking about the financial commitment there just to your core of players in one sport, in football, and that would be a tremendous undertaking right there. And then, of course, if you start looking at the salaries for coaches and the expansion of all the staff and facilities, it would be very dramatic, I think, to make that type of a leap for a school that's traditionally Division II. And of course, as Joe noted, there are schools that have done it. But again, I would tend to agree with Joe here that what niche do you fill then? For me, as a fan, I don't know that much about the FCS football teams, where like Missouri State and some of those fall. And even you take Coach Fritz, who was the Mules football coach for many years and quite successful, is now a Division I coach. He spent some time immediately after coaching for the Mules in FCS football and got his team to the national championship, I believe, twice. Mm-hmm. And so, but that was Sam Houston State, and they played, is it North Dakota State, I believe it was.
North Dakota State.
And so, how often do you see those teams on television? To me, they're almost kind of in a no man's land, as a fan at least, where I don't see them a lot. Now, I'm sure if I'm in that community, then I'm up to date and I know them. But that's what I like about Division II because it's accessible. The venues are such that you can sit, watch the game. You may know the athletes if you go to school there, the student athletes. And I think that, as Joe mentioned, UCM is a perennial powerhouse in many sports in Division II. And if you jump to that next level, why then you may become irrelevant for a good decade or two before anything good comes of it.
So you both agree, like it takes more than just being athletically talented
Yeah.
to go D1.
Well, Nebraska Omaha, they were in the MIAA for a couple of years before they decided to go Division I. They had a very successful football team, and they had a 2-time defending national champion wrestling team. They cut both programs so they could afford to do it. They couldn't afford it financially, keeping those two teams, so they cut those two very successful programs out. And football is your moneymaker.
Right.
And then they went Division I in hockey, right? Because
Yeah, they
so
went
they
one in hockey.
fit their niche there, I guess you would say. But as Joe mentioned, then you have how many potential student athletes lost their chance to compete in the sports they love and that were very successful. So it's certainly, it comes with an opportunity cost, I guess you would say, to make that type of expansion. And while I'm sure there are schools who are thrilled they've done this, it would be a long road to hoe, I think. And I would not, if I were a betting man, I would not bet that any of UCM's teams would be making that leap. But
well, there's only one Division II school that I can think of that has gone Division I, and again, it's all football, because those FCS 1AA schools, you really don't see much about them. The mid majors, you don't see much about them until tournament time, and you get your Cinderella teams.
Right.
But it's football. And the one Division II team that's gone up that has been very successful in football, North Dakota State. I think it's 4 straight national championships going up to FCS. But have you heard anything else about any of their other programs?
Nope.
So, yeah, I would be very opposed to a move like that.
Well, I definitely agree with both of you. But right now, we do have to take a quick break.
Okay.
So don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll talk Royals. See you then.
All right.
Live with a human for a while and you get to know a few things. Like, I know she's actually not a morning person. I know she does strange tricks for no treats. I know that water makes her howl like crazy. I even know how the floor stays so clean. She's quick. But the one thing I will never for the life of me know is how she gets so tiny and inside that box. Natalie, how do you get so tiny?
Welcome back to Central Side. Again, I'm here with Dr. Joe Moore and John Kennedy. So we'll just dive right into our next topic. So what are your expectations for the upcoming Royals baseball season? Do you think maybe another title or going back?
It's tough. I was reading Sports Illustrated the other day, and they have the Royals ranked as the 13th best team the 10th best team in, the Cardinals are 13th best.
Okay, stop.
The Royals are picked 10th best in Major League Baseball, 5th best in the American League, and they made the point that the way the Royals are built for speed, for contact hitting, and then having a really solid bullpen is a really good, solid foundation. But it's hard when a team stays with that formula year in and year out to keep it going. You saw a lot of teams last year realized, hey, this kind of worked for them. Let's try it. Houston, for example. Now, Houston had a lot of power too, but that's partly their stadium.
Yeah.
I think they've got a chance. Their young guys have to keep developing. They hit the ball really well last year. People don't look at them as a slugging team because they don't have a whole lot of home runs. They were 14th out of 15 in American League in home runs. They were 3rd in doubles, 4th in triples. Because their stadium is so big and they are so fast,
Goes back to
that
the
all
stadium
adds
thing.
up to a slugging percentage so they can hit the ball. They've got that great bullpen, outstanding defense. I'm still not sold on their starting rotation. They've got a lot of 3-4 guys.
Yeah, I think that's their Achilles heel maybe this year. And success is hard to criticize. I mean, they've made the World Series twice in a row. Came very close the first year. They were 90 feet from tying Game 7. So, and then they won it rather convincingly this past year. And so, and in fact, they were leading their division handily before they ever started making deals to get guys like Johnny Cueto and Ben Zobrist. So I think they've shown that the core they have in place is good. And they did go out and they got Ian Kennedy, which, great last name. So they got
any relation?
I have no, I don't think he's related, unfortunately. So a New Jersey I may have to buy. But they got Ian Kennedy, who that deal has been kind of soundly criticized because he hasn't been wildly successful the past couple of years. But I think he is the kind of pitcher that will come into Kansas City, and with Dave Island, their pitching coach, and the combination of a large, pitcher-friendly ballpark, I would not be surprised at all to see him be very successful, get it to the bullpen, and of course then when they get to the bullpen it's lights out. And they really didn't, in terms of their position players, they're very solid. There are very few changes except right field, where there'd be competition between probably Gerard Dyson and Paulo Orlando. So I think the other thing I think too, and I heard some talk radio about this the other day. Do they decide to come out of spring training saying we have a target on our back, we're number one, everybody's gunning for us, or do they say, hey, all these other prognosticators and media are saying we can't do it, we get no respect? And
Like last year.
I think they're going to probably embrace the fact that, hey, we've been there and done that, and why not do it again? You know, they have confidence, and I think confidence is a major thing, and they have chemistry.
Yeah.
They've been the underdogs for so long. It's kind of
Yes.
like, this is our season, this is our time.
The one question I have for him, you talk about Kennedy and that middle infield and those corners, they really help a lot of pitchers out. That guy behind the plate, Salvador Perez, who's going to be there every day.
Fantastic, yeah.
He's going to help a lot of pitchers out. Second base. 2 years ago, they do not make the World Series without Omar Infante, because the years before that, they were a revolving door of kind of decent second base play
like
and no offense.
journeyman type of talent.
2 years ago, Omar Infante comes in there, solidifies that position, provides some leadership, provides some maturity. They don't make the World Series without Omar Infante. Then last year, he really struggles. Ben Zobrist comes in. I don't think they make the World Series without Ben Zobrist. Second base is key for them.
I would tend to agree with you on the first point and disagree on the second. They were, I think, 17 games ahead of the the number 2 team in their division when they got Zobrist. And so the division, I think, was really in hand. I think they win their division without Zobrist and without Cueto, because Cueto was really a bust for all intents and purposes until the postseason. But Zobrist was such a good player and could be plugged in so many places. But it's amazing to think when Alex Gordon went down last year, I thought, we're in trouble. This is, they're one of their stars. And in fact, they just kept on going. So I think they've got that kind of next man up mentality that has worked for teams like the Patriots, who will lose great stars and then they come on to be fantastic the next year. And the Cardinals, you mentioned, their franchise has been a model of that for so many years.
Last year, how many guys did they have out, and then they get the
and
best
they win
record
100
in the
games.
league? Yeah.
So it's pretty phenomenal. And I think the leadership from Dayton Moore to Ned Yost, that's really solidified. And I think Ned Yost, those players, especially now, I think they're fully on board with him. They know he's got their back. He's one manager who's never going to throw his team under the bus in the post-game interview. He sticks up for them, and at the same time, he's not rolling over for the players. He's doing what's right. But I really think the Royals will be a force to be dealt with. But if they have an Achilles heel, to me, it's definitely the starting pitching, because there's not one of those starting pitchers at this point that scare me when I see him in the lineup.
Ventura does. Ventura scares me half to death.
Yeah.
But I'm a Royals fan. It shouldn't be scaring
exactly.
me. Which Ventura am I going to get? Am I going to get the 100-mile-an-hour flamethrower who's just going to light you up?
And who's he
going
going to
get the
pick a
guy
fight
who's
with?
going to pick a fight with
unpredictable.
Godzilla whenever he's up to the
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that they're going to have to get a handle on. But the nice thing is they've got a real cast of what ifs there. Chris Medlin, who they acquired from the Braves, came on fine last year after his second Tommy John surgery, which is pretty rare. He was an amazing pitcher before his injuries, and a lot of people think he may be a gem and a real comeback player of the year perhaps this year, where he might light it up and be a number 1 or number 2 caliber starter. If he does that, you're looking at 4 quality starters between Ventura, Edinson Volquez was amazing last year, and then you're looking at Kennedy, perhaps it's Medlin. You have Kyle Zimmer from the minors, who's been an often injured player who may come up and make it. So I think you've got a real cast of what ifs there, and who's going to hit.
Vargas coming back.
from
Duffy,
surgery.
wherever he's going to
Duffy,
fit in.
yeah.
I mean, he's really versatile for him, so that really helps.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and then my guy Joaquin Soria, I'm so
There you
fired
go.
up to have him back. They talked about making him a starter because he has so much stuff, and because he's been through 2 Tommy Johns himself. So maybe if he's not an all-out guy, you can stretch him out a little bit.
Well,
Well, you guys touched on some really good points. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some more sports. See you after this break.
I choose red to blaze my own trail.
I choose red to be with students and faculty who make me feel at home.
I wanted a university with a big picture perspective. That's why I chose red.
Why do you choose red?
Choose red.
Choose red. Choose the University of Central Missouri. Choose red. Can I do that? Is that allowed?
Hello and welcome back to the Central Side. All right, so now we're still on the Kansas City front. We're going to talk about a little bit about the Chiefs. What do the Kansas City Chiefs need to do this season in order to make the conference championship and maybe even the Super Bowl?
You know, I think maybe the biggest move for this Chiefs this offseason may be the retirement of Peyton Manning. I mean, I don't know it's so much what the Chiefs have done as opposed to what their opponents might have to deal with. And I think for the first time now that you don't have a first ballot Hall of Famer playing you twice a year, that's got to be, and I'm saying that, I'm assuming, I can't imagine he's going to be there. Yeah, I sure hope not. I mean, obviously his skills were eroding at light speed there at the end of the year, but he wrapped up and got his final hurrah. I think, though, that they have a real chance. I think the Raiders are becoming a quality team again. San Diego is really just mired in nowhere. And so I think, you know, if they can get past the Raiders and then the Broncos, depending on how they handle their victory, are they going to be able to keep the band together, so to speak? I think the Chiefs have a really good chance to win their division. And I think maybe that's the key to them advancing further, is getting that first round bye, getting everybody rested, and then being able to go farther in the playoffs, because that seems to be their Achilles heel. Is, you know, a couple times in the last few decades they've gotten there, but they just can't seem to get over the hump, you know, and onto the next level. And a lot of people would say that's because you don't have that Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. But I'm kind of an Alex Smith fan. I think he's worthwhile and a good leader and a incredibly smart leader too.
Definitely.
So.
I'm with you. I think with Peyton Manning retiring, and he didn't do anything to him this year. They beat him in Denver, and then when they were in Kansas City, he didn't even play. They were really an underwhelming Super Bowl champion in my mind. I mean, they had a great defense. Their offense was nothing. They had a great defense, and the last defense that I remember being really good and continuing on was the Ravens back in the early 2000s. I don't see them continuing with that. The Raiders, heaven knows what they're going to be. They can be really look like they're making progress one year and then the next year lose 12 games. San Diego, I think, is tanking right now. But I think the Chiefs. I'm a huge Alex Smith fan. I got so tired of people saying he can't throw deep. To who? Who was he going to throw to?
That was
you
the
get
problem.
Jeremy Maclin, and all of a sudden, oh, a guy can throw deep.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
he can run, and he can extend plays. They need another receiver on the other side of Maclin. I would have liked to have seen Dwayne Bowe on the other side. Now, I know he had some contract issues and some other issues, but giving him a quality receiver on the other side and see what we could have done with the two of them. Jamal Charles coming back. There's some who have said, well, they don't get that far. I heard one commentator say Jamal Charles going down may have been the best thing for Alex Smith because he couldn't rely on Jamal Charles. So he had to move the ball around more.
Security valve has gone that way, right?
Well,
so
okay, but I'd still like to have Jamal Charles in the backfield.
Oh, no doubt. And I think, you know, he'll be back at some point next year, which can only improve your team. But I'm with you. I think maybe the single biggest difference between the season before and the 2015-16 season was Jeremy Maclin and stretching the field a little bit. And then really I think that was evidenced in the playoff game when Jeremy Maclin gets hurt at the end of the Houston game. You know, you kind of won the battle and lost the war there, because when he went down, that was bad. And I think had they had a healthy Jeremy Maclin, that game against New England Patriots may have been entirely different, because once you can no longer stretch the field, then you're down to, you know, young players like Chris Conley and Albert Wilson, some of the other guys. It was really difficult for them to, against a defense like the Patriots at their stadium, you know, to really have much success. So.
And they still
By lost by a touchdown to the, you know, perennial Super Bowl team. So that was a pretty amazing. And to win, you know, I think what amazed me the most about last season was, and I've been a Chiefs fan since I was old enough to watch football. I think to string as many victories in a row as they did was really amazing. And then to take that into the playoffs and just annihilate Houston in their stadium was pretty amazing. So I wouldn't have wanted to play them, you know, at that point. They certainly were playing with house money, and they defied all odds. So I enjoyed watching it.
I think the big thing they're going to have to deal with is defense, because that was their strength this year was their defense. And it reminded me back to the days of, you know, when Frank Gantz was the defensive coordinator and Deron Cherry was one of my all-time favorite players, was roaming the secondary with Kevin Ross and Lloyd Burris and Albert Lewis, and that secondary, you just didn't throw the ball on that team. They had the great, you know, front line and great linebackers and stuff. Tamba Hali and Derek Johnson may be gone, and that's sad. I mean, as a Chiefs fan, those are Kansas City.
Yeah, they're kind
Chiefs
of cornerstones, you know, for a long time, especially Tamba. Well, both of them have been here over a decade. And I kind of feel like that Johnson has at least a year or two in the tank, and I'd really like to see him come back. And I don't know if Tom Bahali is in the same case or not, but I guess that's where it's got to get really tough with the salary cap in football is how are you going to manage this supporting cast? Another one I think is interesting is what do they do at quarterback? You've got Chase Daniel as the backup quarterback at, I want to say he's making like $3 or $5 million a year. It's a pretty sizable contract for a guy that you're praying is never in the game because you like Alex Smith. And I think Chase Daniels is very, very capable. He could start on a handful of teams, I think, and do quite well. So, you know, I'm not against him at all, but I wonder sometimes if maybe they're going to end up going with one of their other quarterbacks, either Aaron Murray or Tyler Bray as their backup, and freeing up some of that money they're paying to Chase Daniels. And
well, they've talked about bringing RG3, and
Joe looks disgusted.
why? Why?
Yeah, I can't see that.
I'm sorry, that's all the time we have for right now. Best of luck for the Royals and the Chiefs this next coming season. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in today.
You bet. Enjoy it.
All right, see you guys next time on the Central Side.
All right, great.